This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris. Welcome to Come for Tea. Today for tea, I'm going to be serving some tuna toasties. They're a great little savory tidbit that you can put on your tea tray. They have some delicious tuna, some fresh tomato, and some melted cheddar cheese on top. Now to get started, we're going to start with some canned tuna. Now you can use 1 or 2 cans depending on how many tuna toasties you're going to want to make. Today I'm going to be using 2 small flat cans, and I've gone ahead and drained these real well, and I'm going to go ahead and put these into my bowl. And sometimes you need to actually flake the tuna a little bit with your fork, so if you need to do that, now would be the time. We don't want any big chunks of tuna. Nice small pieces will do. Now I'm also going to add some dill relish, and what this is it's dill pickles that have been chopped up really fine. Now I like to add maybe 2 or 3 spoonfuls, but for most of this tuna toasty it's to your taste. And then I'm going to go ahead and get that relish mixed in with the tuna. And you can see it's just enough to kind of be sprinkled all the way throughout. Now I'm going to add a little bit of mayonnaise to kind of hold this together. Now I'm using a light mayonnaise, but you can use whatever you have on hand. And again, this is to taste. I'm just going to use a couple of spoonfuls. And you'll see I don't want this to be really juicy, but I do want it to be nice and moist. And then I'm going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Now at this point, I think it's really important that you taste your tuna and make sure that it's nicely seasoned. Now it's time to put our tuna toasties together. Now I have a baking sheet here, and I'm going to put a piece of foil on top because we're going to be broiling these. Now normally I like to use parchment, but if you put parchment under the broiler it has a tendency to catch fire, so we don't want that. So I'm going to have my foil on my baking sheet, and then I'm going to take some sliced bread. Now I like to use sourdough bread, but you can use any kind that you have on hand. I'm going to start here today with about 4 slices on my baking sheet. Then I'm going to take my tuna mixture and I'm going to start placing that on top of my bread. Now I'm not putting on a super thick layer, but I do want to make sure that the tuna is covering the entire piece of bread, just like this. So you can see that those 2 flat cans of tuna made just enough to cover these 4 slices of bread. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get a tomato and we're going to slice it in, I would say about 1/8 inch slices. We want to make sure to get that great tomato flavor, but we don't want it to be very chunky because remember this is a tea sandwich. So just about 1/8 of an inch. And now I'm going to take these slices of tomato, and it's usually about 2 or 3, and it's fine if they overlap on each slice of the bread. Now I'm going to need to slice up 1 more tomato to cover the rest of these. Now you know so much of this depends on the size of your bread, the size of your tomatoes, but one of the things you don't want to get caught is not having enough of your ingredients. So if you have a little bit of tomato left over, that's fine. You can use it, either make tomato sandwiches, or you could use it in a salad for that night. So now I'm going to go ahead and cover the rest of my bread. Okay, so you can see great flavor, the bread, the tuna, the tomato. Now one more thing we're going to add. Now I'm going to take some cheddar cheese, and if you can, get a medium or sharp cheddar cheese. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grate some of that here on my board. And then I'm just going to take a nice pile of that and place that right on top of my tuna toasty. You know, when you use a mild cheese, a mild cheddar cheese, I find that when you're cooking or baking with it, it really just doesn't give a lot of flavor. And that's why if I'm going to be cooking the cheese, or in this case broiling it, I really like to use a medium to sharp cheese because I find it just gives a ton of flavor. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop these under the broiler. Now you're going to want to watch them because what we're looking for is the cheese not only just to get melted but get a little bubbly and just a little bit browned. Now you can see the cheese is really nicely melted, but see that little bit of browning on them? That's perfect. When cheese browns like that, it just adds a great flavor. Well, don't these look fantastic? You know, one of the really nice things about making tuna toasties for tea is you can go ahead and get them all made, the bread, the tuna, the tomato, and the grated cheese on top, and then just put them in the refrigerator until you're ready to serve them because they just take a couple of minutes under the broiler. Now let me show you how I like to serve them. You can do this in a couple of ways. I get a big knife, one that doesn't have any serrated edges, and I just kind of cut down through the middle of it. Now you can see these are too big for tea. So then what I do is I take each half and I cut them down the center again. Now again, depending on your type of bread you're using, sometimes it'll be a rectangle, sometimes it'll be a little bit of a triangle, but it doesn't really matter. And then another way you could cut them is almost like in fingers. So just go through like this, and then you end up having these little rectangular fingers. So there's a number of ways you can cut these. Well, if you'd like to give these tuna toasties a try at your next tea, just go to our website and visit the Come for Tea show notes, and I'll have the recipe there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'll see you next time.